right, folks, how's everyone doing? I'm going to warn you right now, I'm not used to a handheld, so we'll see how this works. I've got both my hands occupied, and I like to move them around a lot, apparently, when I talk, so hopefully I don't sling it out of my hand unintentionally. All right, so obviously everyone in this room chose the EX topic this morning, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about the importance of your firm's website. I don't believe, and it's not just because I'm a digital director at a creative agency, I don't believe that websites get near the amount of strategic attention that it deserves, honestly, for anything in professional services firms, but especially in this area of engaging talent and recruitment, and this idea of the employee experience. So everyone knows this. I have not had a single firm that I've worked with in the last 5 years that has not listed the talent war or recruitment or retention as a top challenge. It's a strategic initiative, it's a strategic goal, it's an incredible challenge. So I don't need to belabor that, you guys know that. It's a major, major issue. And here is what I don't think a lot of firms spend enough time thinking about, is the fact that recruitment has changed. I know some HR people like to call it talent acquisition. That's the buzzword. Personally, I would rather be recruited than acquired because it sounds like I have control over one and not the other, but I digress there. But regardless, I'm going to stick with recruitment. I like that word. It's changed a lot. I don't think every professional services firm has changed with it. And whenever I'm talking to marketers, I always like to encourage marketers, especially in professional services, to look outside your industry for inspiration. Look outside your industry to see what the best and brightest and growing companies are doing and use them as the bellwether and not your peers. Because I think a lot of really, really, really powerful ideas can come from outside of the industry. But as you look at what smart companies are doing, it's a lot of what Ida just talked about. They don't think about recruitment from an HR perspective. They think about recruitment as a marketing opportunity. Employer branding is the buzzword. Recruitment marketing. So it's all about how do we effectively attract and engage with top talent. I believe this. A website is one of the most valuable assets your firm has for your employer brand, for recruitment, and even for the employee experience, all right? Because this is the fact. The EX journey begins often with your firm's website. Just like the client experience doesn't begin when they're a client, it begins when you're starting to try to recruit that client, when you're doing business development and client development. It's exactly the same with the employee experience. It starts when they're not even yet an employee. So this is just a linear way to think about it. But, it starts with a candidate, and the goal is to eventually create an advocate, right? We know this. Your best employees are the ones that get their friends to come work for your firm. You don't have to recruit because they're recruiting for you. We know this. But it starts down here, and a lot of those early stages they're not even an employee yet. And so along the way, there are a lot of touch points, and this is just a theoretical here. It's not perfect. So if you're like, hey, you're missing something, I know that I am. It's just to get you thinking about the employee journey. But the website is involved a lot early on. And guess what? It's also involved down once you're an employee. We have to actually filter out employee traffic to our clients' websites because they go to the website a lot, unless your website's 10 years old and they're embarrassed of it. That does happen. I won't mention names, okay? So the website plays a major role. Let me just give you some facts about this. 89% of job seekers visit a company's website to research a company before applying for a job. This should not be a shock to anyone. It's shocking that it's only 89%. My guess is the 11% are like 30-year senior veterans, and they're talking about it over beers, and they don't care what the website says. For everyone else, 89% are going to go to your website before choosing to apply for a job. 75% consider a company's career site to be, I want you to see what's bolded there, the top source of information regarding a company's employer brand, right? Job seekers today do not just choose a firm based solely on what they're going to pay them. They choose it on a lot of other factors. We call that the employer brand, who you are, what you stand for, what value proposition you offer to an employee. 75%, and there you go, 75% consider the employer brand before applying for the job. Not going to work for the company. Before they even submit their resume for a job, they want to understand, do I even want to bother applying for this job, right? That's 3/4 of all job seekers. So I believe that many firms' websites are ill-equipped for this task. And I know this. Just the other day, we're starting a new project with a client. Their website is 10 years old. They actually were the one I was referring to. It's top of mind. And their website traffic is completely plateaued for the last 6 years. You know what's happened in the last 6 years? Their company has more than doubled in size of revenue, of employees. So what is that telling you? They've doubled, their employee base has doubled, their traffic to their website has not. That's not good. There should be a correlation. You should be getting more traffic. Perhaps it's because they haven't even messed with their website in 10 years. The other interesting factor is how little of that traffic goes to their career site. It is the literal opposite of what we see on every other firm's website that we work with. So there's a correlation to they've not invested in their website. Therefore, they're not attracting job candidates to their website, which I guarantee you has had a direct impact on their ability to get applicants directly applied. Now, I'm going to make fun of a typical professional services website here for a minute. All right, so here's some things that I would like to say. Number one, they're very firm focused. It's all about the firm. You know, it's all about, hey, what do we want to say? What do we want to look like? What pictures do we want to put on there? Let's make it all about us. We got to make us look awesome, like the guy in the picture here. This is a big one. It's driven by opinions, right? I see this all the time, and I actually have a fellow marketer. I know at least one in the room. Marketers get overridden by principals and by non-marketers all the time because they always know better. So if you're in here and you're a leader and you're not in marketing, please listen to your marketing staff or fire them and hire people that you will trust, because otherwise it's foolish. You have to not be driven by opinions. You need to be driven by facts. You need to be driven by best practices. You need to be driven by strategic thinking. Static and tactical, that 10-year-old website has barely changed in 10 years, barely changed at all. And it was not done with a strategic lens, it was done with tactics. We got to check a box, we need a new website, we need images, we need pictures, we need this, we need that, and they're not thinking through it strategically. Subpar UX and engagement, okay? Another interesting tidbit, again, this is just fresh in my mind because we just presented this to a client yesterday. They have an exceptionally low amount of mobile traffic, even for their industry. Why is that? Any guesses? It's not mobile optimized. It's not mobile friendly. So people pull it up once, they don't come back. They're like, this doesn't work on my phone. What is this? Can you imagine the 20-something student at the career fair pulling up your company's website, and it's a terrible mobile experience when literally all day long these people are just swiping their phone? You know, but you're telling them that you're cutting edge and you're telling them that you're forward thinking, and they're like, yeah, not so much, right? Lacks content and details. We're going to talk about that. You got to have the right content for today's job seeker, or you will not engage them the way that you need to. This is a big one too. Fails to differentiate. A lot of these websites, they all look the same. Everyone is afraid to step outside of comfortable and be a little more bold. We are constantly pushing clients to be bold. Step outside of your comfort zone. Otherwise, you just look like everybody else. And then lastly, it does not consider EX. Most of these websites I'm referring to, they don't think about the employee experience. They honestly don't even think about the client experience. They think about this guy right here. So I believe that your website should set your firm's employee experience apart. For a potential employee, they should already get a sense of what the employee experience is going to be like for your firm. If you are a best place to work, your website needs to reflect that. And not just because you got the little badge at the bottom, that's a start, But that's not it. People want to see it and feel it and experience it. They don't want just to see the little thing at the bottom of the screen. All right, so how are we going to tackle this today? I'm going to cover 3 strategies for creating a website that will properly engage top talent. So number 1, the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to make an impactful first impression. First impression, a good one or a bad one, could be the difference between someone choosing to apply or someone choosing to go on to the 15 other engineering firms that they know they can get a job at, right? It's that simple. Number 2, I talked about this a minute ago, content, giving users what they want and expect, right? It's all about meeting and exceeding expectations with the client experience. Well, a lot of times, you don't just not meet their expectations, but you fall drastically short because what they expect to find on your website is no longer there. And I will say, that has dramatically changed. I think we have a lot of folks in HR that are still thinking the way they thought 20 years ago, and the world is a different place, and the job seeker is now looking for a list of things to find to make their decision to move forward or to not move forward. And lastly, another thing that I don't think gets a whole lot of attention is optimizing the application experience. When they actually see the job listing and they actually click apply, that entire process, how does that work? You know, is it smooth? Is it seamless? Or is it a pain in the you-know-what, right? That's what we're going to talk about. By the way, this is an intimate setting. If you guys have a question, just raise your hand. I'm happy to stop. I don't want to wait for Q&A. Feel free to interrupt me. It'll give me a chance to get another swig of my Pepsi Zero. All right, let's start with number 1, making an impactful first impressions, okay? They did a study a while back that literally it is a split second for a user to form an opinion about your firm's website. Stanford did a research study that found that in that determination, that opinion, 70% of users form credibility opinions based on that first impression visiting a company's website. So I think the question that you ask yourself as you hold up the proverbial mirror is, what is that first impression that we're sending? Again, are we talking out of both sides of our mouth? We are cutting edge. We are a best place to work. We are the best firm in the business. Does your website reflect that, or does your website send a different message? These are the questions that you need to constantly be asking, because a great website today, a year from now, could not be, maybe isn't best in class, because things change quick in web, trust me. I try to stay on top of that, and that's a full-time job. So investing in the quality of your website. It always amazes me how you could have a $100 million firm that gets all scared to spend a little bit more money on their website than they did 8 years ago. Knowing how important the web is, knowing that half of the generation that's working in the workplace are digital natives, understanding that recruitment is now all about people going to your website and looking at things and understanding firms are still afraid to invest properly in their website, but they'll fork out a ton to a recruiter, a headhunter, to get that. So investing in that website is not just because it benefits companies like mine. It does. It's what we do for a living. However, you get what you pay for. You guys know that expression. It's very true in life. Very, very, very true in life. Just ask me about my rental car right now. Not living up to my expectations. Another way that you make a great first impression is to create a great user experience. This is websites 101, right? So what are some things that are essential for a great user experience? And I could talk all day just about this, but for the sake of our conversation today, I'm going to keep it simple. Number 1 is user-centric site architecture. Site architecture is a fancy word us digital people use to describe how your site is organized. Now, most firms, when they sit down to do this exercise, they don't think about the user. They don't think about how will the user look for this information? How will the user organize our markets, our services, our expertise? They think through what is our org chart, how are we internally organized, what will make sense, what's going to appease all the different opinions in the room to make sure their service, their thing is labeled the way they want it labeled, is organized the way they want it organized. That is not the way to organize your site. You need to think first and foremost about the user. The second thing, clear and intuitive navigation. They got to know how to use your website. Whenever we have clients that want to try something new and different as it relates to the navigation, we push back hard because, as you guys know, since I mentioned the car, steering wheels are always in the same place unless you're in Europe. You know, they have moved the place to start your car a little bit. Now it's a button. Sometimes it's here and sometimes it's there. But generally, you can get in someone else's car and pretty quickly acclimate yourself to using their car. They're not that different. You guys have probably been to a website before where you're like, whoa, how the heck do I navigate this thing? That's a bad user experience. No one should ever have to learn how to use your website. It should be very intuitive. And so that's a very important first impression. When their first impression is, holy crap, I'm confused, that is not good, right? Visual hierarchy. We say this a lot. If everything is screaming at the same volume, you're not going to get through. When someone lands on your website, there should be clear hierarchy of what you're saying is most important to least important. The fonts, the images, the way it is laid out should establish a hierarchy, just like, you know, the old school way of writing newspaper articles I learned in college. Content strategy. What does this mean? You've actually taken the time to think through what should the content be based upon who our users are. What are they expecting? What are they looking for? What will be helpful? What do they need? Not what do we want to put on the page. Scannable pages in search. As much as it may pain copywriters, most users aren't going to read all 794 words on that page. They're going to scan, right? We all scan. They're going to scroll. They're going to scan. You need to have your site purposefully scannable, right? If they want to dive deep and read the whole thing, then they should be able to do that. If they just want to scroll and get a sense of what you're trying to convey on that page, that should be easily possible. This is another one that has really grown a lot in the last few years, is accessibility. We're encouraging clients to go for ADA compliance, at least a level A. That is something that as time goes on, I think 5 years from now, it'll just be everybody does it. Like in the early days of mobile, it was an upgrade to get mobile, to be responsive. Now it's just price of entry. I think ADA is headed that way, but that's definitely a consideration. And then last but not least, something that we're always having to work to maintain, but fast page speed and site performance. There's always going to be a balance of, if you want big images and video, those are drains on page speed, and so there has to be a balance of, you can't have too much, it needs to be optimized, and sometimes your page score might go down a little because you have these big high-def images, and that's okay as long as it's still a good page speed, but regardless, you need to think about that. We had one architecture firm that we did an audit on their site, and it took like 15 seconds to load their homepage because they had like 120 megabyte high-def images they had uploaded straight from the photographer, and that's not good. So you need to think about that. And I talked about mobile, optimizing for the mobile experience. You know, early days, you just needed it to be, quote, mobile friendly. Now you need to actually think about the mobile experience. I would say look at your analytics, and as the percentage of mobile users goes up and the percentage of desktop users go down, you need to start to shift towards more of a mobile first. In professional services, generally it's about 25% mobile and 75% desktop, which makes sense. A lot of your clients and a lot of your job seekers are looking at your website during the day, generally behind a desktop computer. In another industry we work in, we have an insurance client. A lot of their folks do business at home on the sofa, and they're using their mobile, and it's the opposite. It's about 75% mobile and about 25% desktop. So naturally, we put a little more emphasis on the mobile experience because it's predominantly mobile, but I would say, again, over time, you're going to see that shift. Interesting factoid, though. Tablet is all but completely dropped off. It's like people don't even use iPads anymore. I don't know. It's just gone. It used to be, it was like 10%. Now it's like 1%. Does anybody here actually still use an iPad? Yeah. Well, you do. That's okay. I think because iPhones are practically iPads now. They're ginormous. But yeah, mobile is definitely something that, again, sets a first impression. Something else that I think is important is starting with the why. What is your firm's vision, your mission? What is your why? Lead with that. Here, this particular client, a fully integrated construction and development firm. So they tell everybody what they do right out of the gate, but the emphasis is on, their why statement, enhancing communities and advancing the world. That's what they believe. They're all about their vision. Their mission is all about the communities that they're a part of, and that's first and foremost. So if I'm a job seeker, okay, because you guys know this, today's job seeker wants to work somewhere where they feel like they're doing more than just earning a paycheck, but they're contributing to something in society. And then there's a video there that you could click to learn more about what that looks like. So making it easy to find what they're looking for. This is a big one. There needs to be a current openings link in your careers section. If you don't have that there, you got to add. That's like you go back today and say, we got to add that. If it's just baked into your careers page and someone has to scroll for like a mile to get to the current openings, that's a problem. As you look at website analytics, and we do all the time, most job seekers go straight to careers and go straight to current openings. That's either a first-time visitor, but likely a second or third or fourth or fifth-time visitor. They want to just be able to find what it is that they're looking for. This idea of forcing users on a journey to make sure they see this thing you want them to see, don't do that. They want to just find what they're looking for quickly. This is another big one, and this maybe applies more to larger firms than the smaller firms, but speaking to your ideal candidate. So this particular client realized that, we're large, and there's a big difference in what a graduate or a student is looking for versus an experienced professional. And guess what? Our administrative people, marketing, those folks are looking for something different. Business services is actually marketing and IT. So they actually have individual pages that speak directly to those audiences. Because if you're an engineering firm, your experience as an IT or a marketing person is very different than if you're a PE, right? And if you're an administrative assistant, that's going to be a different experience. You're going to have different needs, different interests than someone who's in marketing. So they have actually pulled this out, and they've targeted these personas. And we'll talk about that more in a minute, but that's been very helpful for them. Because again, first impression is, wow, there's content just for people like me. This is another big one. Stimulating with engaging visuals. Like, give them something to look at, a little bit of eye candy. Showcase your firm's work. Showcase your people. Showcase something in a more interesting and compelling way to create a unique experience that's a little bit different than what they had before. So we talked about knowing your why and conveying your why. I think you also need to deliver a compelling employer value proposition. So this was actually the same firm that did the why statement I mentioned. Right here at the top of their careers page, they give you their employer value proposition. And the employer value proposition is, as someone who's hired, what can I expect to get in return for you hiring me? If I'm your employee, what am I going to get out of that equation? That's essentially what your EVP needs to convey, and it needs to be really front and center on the careers page, whether in the hero section or whether in the copy, you need to articulate that. You also need to demonstrate your expertise. The larger your firm is, the more varied in the work that you do, people are going to want to know if you do the type of work that they're interested in or that they have experience in. So making sure that your expertise is very front and center, again, on that first impression. Don't make them click through 7 or 8 other pages in order to just have a quick 35,000 view of what kind of work do they do, where do they have expertise. Showcasing people. I would say this is one of the trends that is definitely different from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, firms were afraid to put people on their website. Do you know why? There's 2 reasons, and they're both horrible. Number one, yes. And I'm like, hey, buddy, LinkedIn, you ever heard of it? Okay. Second reason, worst reason. Do you know why? Well, this is Jennifer, and well, what if Jennifer leaves? we'll have to reshoot the picture. So 10 years ago, professional services websites had no people. They had stock photography. Come on. How inviting and warm was that? How much of the culture did they convey? It was a liability getting clients as much as it was employees. But fortunately, those times are changed. We are having to talk one client currently into the need to have leadership bios because they're like, we don't want to put that out there. I'm like, well, guess what? Job candidates, they want to know who's running this joint. Who's running this thing? Who are these people? Clients the same. They want to know. Who's Bob that I'm meeting with later? All right, and this is a big one. I was just talking to John over here. This is John, by the way. Wave, John. John's a good guy. We did a website with his firm last year. And so I was just telling him about this. So anyone here ever heard of geolocation targeting? One person. All right, I'm happy to tell you about it. So tell me if this scenario makes sense. You've heard of it before. You're a national or regional firm. You have a lot of different offices, but a lot of times your website tends to convey really the home office. And so those satellite offices, the small office in Miami with 7 people, feels left out, feels like it reflects a New York firm. It doesn't reflect a Miami firm. Geolocation targeting is a solution for that. So this isn't the example that I'm about to tell you about, but this is a real example that we did for a building products company, and they have over 120 locations around the entire country. And based upon where you are in the country, it will automatically tell you what your local branch is. And you can always change that. And yes, if you're going through your company's, VPN, then you may get a wonky result. That's always a fraction of the people, but most people, if you're in Miami, you're going to see their Miami location. Now, how will this work as it relates to careers? We have a client right now we're doing a website for. They are geolocation targeting their career page. So they're out of New York, but they have an office presence in Baltimore. And what they've said is, in our discovery was, we hear all the time that when people in the Baltimore area, when job candidates go there, they don't feel like we're really in Baltimore because all of our pictures are from our home office, because that's where all the cool stuff happens, and they don't feel like we're really a Baltimore firm. Well, guess what? With this new careers page, there will be content specific to each region. So if you're in Baltimore and you're a job candidate and you pull up their careers page, the pictures of the chili cook-off and the pictures of the Habitat for Humanity project are going to be in Baltimore. They're not going to be in New York. The projects on the home page, featured projects, will be Baltimore featured projects, not New York featured projects. So what this does is exactly what any good retail B2C consumer business has already been doing. They are tailoring the user experience for their users. I'm telling you, the best ideas that I've ever had as a marketer, I've completely stolen from retail. People always said, oh, retail, B2C is irrelevant. No. We're just like 20 years behind B2C and B2B, but great ideas come from B2C. So as I said earlier, if you want good ideas, look outside your industry. And this is an example. This idea came from Home Depot. We're like, hey, if Home Depot can do that, why can't Lansing Building Products? And that's exactly what we did, and it's been very successful. And all of our data shows that it gets used a lot. All right, any questions about strategy 1? I'm going to take a swig of my Pepsi Zero. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the town and let's say, we've had that very internal discussion about showing people on our website and not. But not only that, but the level in which we share information. And I don't think that we should just share, it's no problem. But I get that kind of concern that, no, if we put, he's a project manager in Richmond, Virginia, he's going to get recruited by so-and-so.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on, like, and from my perspective, we're about a person from. So at this point, we currently have each of our employees on the website.
Yeah. So I would say they're going to get recruited whether you put them on your website or not. If they're going to leave, they're going to leave. Those recruiters are sneaky. I get hit up every single day from somebody offering me a job or at least to apply right? I had one that was actually pretty interesting because I'm a theme park nerd, and Universal Studios Florida somehow, for some bizarre reason, sent me a thing. Hey, there's a CMO role. I thought about it for a second, but normally, I just blow it off and I move on. We might want to edit that out if my boss hears that, but I'm just teasing. But no, but I think that it's more of an asset than it is a liability. Is there risk? Okay, I'll give you. There's a little bit. But what's the risk of not showing your people? In professional services, your people are your product. So if you don't showcase your people, then you're not taking advantage of that opportunity to demonstrate. What do we always say? What do firms always say their biggest differentiator is? What do they always say? Our people. So if you don't show your people and tell their stories, and we're going to talk about it more, this is more than just the group shot and the leadership bios. When we get into other things people expect, they want to see real people, testimonials from Joe Schmo that works at your firm, not just your CEO. Truthfully, they don't really care anything about your CEO other than who is the CEO. That's it. They want to know about people that are like them. So I would say definitively, in my opinion, it is worth the risk because the reward is much higher if Joe gets recruited and he happened to be the featured employee spotlight. It probably had nothing to do with that. Recruiters are too slick to go to your website and be like, ooh, Joe, he just gave a testimonial. They're finding him on LinkedIn. And unhappy employees are already looking somewhere else anyway. So, any other questions about making a good first impression? I switched hands with my mic. It feels weird now. Am I doing okay? All right, good. Just making sure. I'm not used to holding the mic or being filmed. So, what's that? Repeat the question. Okay, I will remember that. All right. So let's move on to strategy number 2, and this is a big one for me. Giving users what they want and expect. So, what do we want on our website is the wrong question to ask. Whenever your firm sits down and endeavors to build a new website or to update the content, this is not the question that you should be asking. Relevancy is this beautiful sweet spot between what you put on your website and what users want to see on your website. What do they want to read? What do they want to see? What do they want to listen to? What do they want to view? That is what you want to look for. And so when you can do that, that's when you're going to be relevant. That's when you're going to engage your audience in a really big way. So the primary goal of every user is to find what they're looking for as quickly and as easily as possible. Remember earlier I was talking about navigation, and I was talking about a great first impression with UX. This is critical. But a big part of that is to make sure that you are putting the what on your website. You got to have the right content. I mentioned earlier about candidate personas. We don't get to do this often, but we have had a few clients, and I will admit there tend to be larger firms with bigger HR departments that are more strategic in nature, where we actually get an opportunity to build candidate personas and do research. And there's one client a couple years ago, we actually did about 24 interviews with recent hires and even some hires that, well, they weren't hires. They turned them down. So they wanted to find out, okay, we offered them a job, but they went to work somewhere else. And we actually had conversations with these people to find out about that experience with this particular firm, as well as the experience overall, what was important to them. So we got a pretty good amount of information to build out personas. It was actually the same firm that you saw where they had like the 6 boxes with different, that was research that led to that organization. So what are things that you need to take into account? Obviously, their background. Is this a technical person? Is this more of an administrative person? What does that background look like? What are their goals and their motivations? Someone right out of school looking for an internship has very different goals and motivations than someone who's been in business for 30 years and they're senior and they're going to retire in 10 years. Very, very, very different. So understanding that particular persona's goals and motivations will help lead you to be able to identify things on your website and in the employee journey that's going to be helpful. This is a big one. Frustrations and questions. You need to know what questions they want answers to and you need to eliminate frustrations that they're likely to encounter on other websites or your own website, right? And part of that is if you can answer their questions, you're going to eliminate frustrations unless your application is 1,000 questions and requires like 10 screens and uploading 7 documents. We'll get to that in a minute. That will tick off your job candidate for sure. Topics of interest. So like, what are they interested in reading about and learning about? Not necessarily a question, but things that they want to learn about as it relates to your firm. What are they looking for in a firm? Your ideal candidate in a particular category, they are looking for a firm that, and you need to fill in the blank. What does that look like? Job search behavior. Again, a senior professional is going to use the website less than someone who's a young professional or even a mid-career professional. So what does that look like? Understanding that behavior. And if you look at your analytics in the right way, you can often figure out, okay, well, this type of job candidate is going to come to the website an average of 3 times before they apply. This person goes straight to the job posting, and then they apply right away, and we don't have to really worry about them. Understanding what their job search behavior is, information sources. Where do they go to look for information? Do they go to Indeed? Do they go to career fairs? Or do they do their own independent research? And then this is a big one. Challenges to overcome, right? If you're a very, very small firm and you know that they are going to be trying to be recruited by large firms, you are at a disadvantage. But how can you turn that disadvantage into an advantage? How can you proactively anticipate what challenges you have to overcome and proactively address that in the content? If you're the small firm, you got to tell the story of why working for a small firm is a benefit. If you're the large firm, you got to understand and help people feel like they're not going to just be a number and they're not just going to be left behind, because you have 50,000 employees. Whatever that is, whatever challenges that you regularly, why people turn you down, why people go to the other firm, proactively address that. This works the same, by the way, with client experience, with business development. Why do you come in second place? Start proactively addressing those challenges in your marketing materials. That's a free tip for the marketers in the room. All right, understand the key questions they want answered. I love how this one worked out. Who we are, who we need, what we do. Right there, bam. As soon as you land on the careers page, you got that right out of the gate. All right? So people want to know, well, who is this company? What are they involved in? And then obviously, what kind of employee are they looking for? So those are some of the key questions people want answered immediately. All right, I love this one. Don't skip on details because candidates want details. There are so many career sites that are just, we just want to give them a little bit. We don't want to give them too much. No, give them too much. They want too much. This is Morrison Merrily, and they are an employee-owned firm. And guess what? People either don't understand that at all. If they're right out of school, they don't even know what an ESOP is. They don't even think about retirement. They don't even know why it matters. It does matter. And if they've been around a while and they're thinking about retirement, it matters to them as well. So explaining this, by the way, John, you guys did a really good job explaining this. I just showed another client yesterday, like, hey, tell your story. Help people understand the benefits of an ESOP, the benefits of why it matters on your first day of work, right? You're not just working for someone else's pocketbook. You're actually working for your own if you invest in this company. So details, the key here, if you have an ESOP, be detailed, but anything, give details. Yes?
So you know that guy in the blue doesn't work here anymore.
See? And it doesn't even matter. Doesn't even matter. See, what do you imagine? Oh, we can't put that picture because he might leave. All right. So that was like an overview of this, but I'm going to give you 15 specific must-haves for your careers page, your career section. And I'll admit that one of them, the last one, is something that we have a hard time getting people to do, but I still have it a must-have, okay? So let's go through the 15. Number 1, fast facts. Very, very, very quickly, people need to get a feel for how big you are, what kind of work you do. This is a great example of that. They've got 700 clients, 260 active projects, nearly 50% of interns hired into full-time roles. If I'm a potential intern, that matters to me. Right there, they have just sold me on an internship. I got a 50-50 shot of making a full-time gig. 58% have professional licenses. They've been in business 60 years. 60% growth over the last 5 years. That tells me, all right, this is a company moving in the right direction. I want to know more. Bam, right out of the gate. All right, I mentioned give them a lot of details. Well, this is one area where HR does not like to give details, and I'm going to tell you that job candidates with benefits, they want details. I think this is a really great job. You know, a lot of firms might just list health insurance. Well, duh, everybody has health insurance. But giving more details about that, about health savings accounts, work site wellness. Put details on what you are offering because people want to know. Because guess what? They're comparing 5 other firms, and if you're skimpy on your details because you don't want to show your cards and your competitor is Morrison Merrily and they're telling everybody about all their great pets, people are going to be more likely to go where the sure thing is. And keep this in mind, they will assume you don't have it if you don't say that you have it. That's a very logical human conclusion. So you can't share too many details short of maybe the exact monthly cost deducted from your paycheck. That might be a little much to share on your website, but short of that level of information, you really can't share too much about what you're offering. I think something else that's critical, people want to know what it's like to work at your firm. So this particular example, there's a page on firm culture, community involvement, professional development, DEI, path to ownership, and working remotely. All very important, relevant topics for today's job seeker. And I'm going to go a little deeper. That was in the last one, but opportunities for training and growth. That is especially for young professionals. They want to know, is this a place that's going to invest in me as a professional? Will I get training? Will I get professional development opportunities? Will they give me tuition reimbursement? So put some specifics on there and tell them what that's about. So on-demand learning, they help with bonuses if you get licensed, development paths, paid professional memberships, all of those things. All important to someone that wants to join an organization, that wants to get their PE, that wants to be reimbursed for their MBA, whatever it may be. All important things to cover. Job candidates also want to understand your mission, vision, values. I would argue your clients probably could care less, right? It's sort of like your safety record. They want to know you've got a good one. They don't really care about the details. They just want to know that you're safe. You know, mission, vision, values, not all that important to a client, but it matters to someone that's going to go work for you because your mission, vision, core values, it guides how you run your business, especially if you live up to them. It tells them something. It gives them a window into how you run your business and what your culture is like. So talking about those things on your website is definitely important. I think they also want to see your company history. If you've been around 60 years, they don't want to just see pictures of a bunch of black and white guys with, that look like Colonel Sanders. They want to see how you've progressed over that 60 years, that this is not a 60-year-old firm. This is a modern firm with a 60-year storied history. They want to see growth. And so company history, it does matter. If you're a new firm, if you're a startup, if you're less than 10 years, then I think your origin story is important. But regardless, they want to understand more about how your firm got to where you are today. Leadership bios. Definitely important to convey. They do want to know, as I mentioned earlier, who's running this firm. Who are these people and what do I know about them? And giving background, in this case, this is a managing partner of a law firm in town, actually in Raleigh. And there's a lot you can learn about Dan on his bio. They also want to know more about the type of clients that you worked for, the type of projects that they might work on. They want to understand where your expertise is. If you're a professional services firm, the project portfolio is critical not just for clients, but it's critical for potential employees because they want to see that. Do they do any cool work? Do they do cool projects? Is this going to be a place where I'm going to feel like I'm exercising my education and my skill, or am I going to do really, really boring stuff, right? Now, if you do really, really boring stuff, then you got to find a way to sell that a little differently. But regardless, if you do cool stuff, you need to show the cool stuff that you're doing. Employee testimonials. This is one where people do get a little bit nervous. But I'm going to tell you, this will pay dividends. Because you know what? This is DJ Lowe. The average job seeker has way more in common with DJ Lowe than they do with Dan that I just showed you on the other slide. Right? So there's a couple very simple things. One, especially in professional services, we have DEI initiatives in place. We all know that as an industry, it is not historically diverse, and that is something that firms can't snap their fingers and immediately change. So as you look at senior leadership, it doesn't always look the way that the average job seeker would want it to look. But when you showcase your people in other ways, but beyond that top level, you get a chance to show. Because there's a lot of firms that have a fair amount of diversity, and this is an opportunity to show that, and not just diversity related to gender and race, but also this is a document coordinator. You know, at an average professional services firm, there's a lot of different roles, and they're all important, and they all play a part. Employee testimonials gives people a chance to see people that look like them and that do the type of work that they would do, and to hear from them what they love like working at that place for. Of course, your CEO is going to say you're a great place to work, but when someone else says it, when it's actually in the role that you would go to and they're willing to have their picture up there, that's pretty important. News, events, and press releases. I don't think your average client visits your website and goes to your news page. They just don't care that much. But I do think your job candidates, as they are diving deeper into your firm, they want to know what's going on. So if you haven't updated your news section in like 9 months, that's probably not a good thing. You need to put things up there, press releases, thought leadership, news, anything that you're doing that they might find interesting. All right, the next thing, a window into your culture. I mentioned the chili cook-off. I think I got it from here. Like, if your company does a lot of great things all the time to bond, to be a team, showcase that. People, you know, especially younger job candidates, they want to think that they're going to have some fun along the way with the hard work. And I'm 43 years old. I want to have fun. If I got to be somewhere with a bunch of people that aren't my wife and 2 kids, I want to have some fun along the way. So let's look for something that's interesting, showcase the diversity. This particular example, as you hover, it tells you what that picture is of. This isn't just random stuff, but you know, they do a lot of fun stuff at this particular firm. This starts to showcase a little bit about your culture. Easy to find job listings. Again, if I go to careers, there should be a job openings item listed in the drop down, and I should not have to go through very much in order to quickly find what those openings are. I think that's self-explanatory. This is another one, your commitment to important issues. Community, environment, diversity, and inclusion. Job candidates want to know your position on things like sustainability, on ESG, on DEI. A lot of firms are struggling with this. Well, we were not all that diverse. Well, you have to have a commitment. They want to see commitment. Even if they don't see it as a reality, they want to understand that your leadership is committed to diversity. It's committed to sustainability. It's committed to the environment, to community, whatever, that people care about these issues, and you need to make sure that you address them proactively on your website. If they don't see it, they're going to assume you don't care. They're going to assume you're not committed. So always take that into account. They also want to have this question answered. Why should I choose your firm? And I love how this client set up their employee testimonials. That's literally the question that everyone is answering. Why choose, in this case, Burns? All right? Apparently there's never a dull moment there. So I like it. Complex projects, heavy emphasis on quality. Those are things that will matter to people that are going to be the right job candidates. And then number 15, last but not least, I don't see this often enough, a frequently asked questions page or a section. What are the questions that you are often asked by job candidates throughout the process? answer that question, right? It'll save your HR team time because then they won't have to respond to emails as often. It will be helpful. And like little things, how much time should I allow for hearing back from you after my first application? Doesn't every job candidate, like, think back when you submitted your last job application? Crickets, like, am I not considered now because it's been 2 weeks, or is that sufficient? Like, what do I expect? That's a question that we all have. That's a question that they answered in the FAQ. All right. That's my list of 15. Questions, comments, conversation around must-have things to put on your website.
Given that the website sort of needs to do two things from the CX standpoint and the EX standpoint, where does blogging and things like YouTube fit into your strategy, if at all?
It 100% should. So professional services firms should have an active blog, and there's a lot of confusion around this. It doesn't have to be called a blog. Some people think of blog and they think of Sally, who's blogging about her love affair with tiramisu, and she goes to a different restaurant every weekend to get a different one. That's not what I mean when I say blogging. I'm thinking a place where you write articles that demonstrate your subject matter expertise and that position your firm or your subject matter experts as thought leaders. Some people don't like that term either. The idea is if people hire professional services firms for their brain power, then you need to have a place where you have articles that demonstrate your brain power and that position you as having better brain power than all of your competitors. That's important from a business development and marketing standpoint. I also believe it's important for a job candidate who wants to go work. If I think I'm the best and brightest, I want to go work for a firm that makes me think that they are the best and brightest.
Do you think you need to distinguish between those two types of content in one thing?
So normally we would propose, if you're serious about thought leadership, or we call it content marketing, if you're serious about it, you would have a dedicated standalone section. Normally we call it insights. Sometimes it's perspectives. Sometimes it's blog. But we differentiate between news and insights. And so sometimes they get combined because some firms say, hey, look, we really want to have this type of content. We just don't have the staff and the resources to promise that we're going to have an article out weekly. But if we combine it with news, we can have it more frequently. What you don't want is an insights section that hasn't had an article published in 3 months. But if you're committed to it, it should be standalone, and it should be very much front and center throughout your website, highlighting your articles, showing that you have expertise, showing that you have an opinion, that you're willing to put a stake in the ground to talk about things, educating your clients, and conveying your unique position. And YouTube is a channel that plays a strategy in that, right? YouTube, I always like to remind people that like the content is the king, and YouTube is a channel, email's a channel, your website's a channel, Instagram's a channel. It's just another way for you to communicate your point of view, but the content is what is most important to nail, and then you need to get it out there. If you build it, they will come, works in Field of Dreams, but it doesn't work with content marketing. You have to build it, and then you have to look for ways to promote it and get that message out there. Yeah. All right, we're moving on. This is the last one. This one's the shortest one of the 3 strategies, but definitely an important thing for us to talk about. Optimizing the application experience. So I found this interesting. You know, we live in this age of Indeed, and you just assume, I remember it was Monster. Remember that? Career Builder. I don't even know if those still exist. It seems like it's either Indeed or what's the other one that's big now? Glassdoor. There you go. I couldn't think of it. Thank you. But 91% of job candidates would prefer to apply. LinkedIn. That's another one that's really big. But 91% would prefer to apply for a job directly on your website. That's basically everybody. They would prefer to not go through Indeed or LinkedIn or Glassdoor. They want to go directly to your website and apply. This is interesting too, though. But basically 100% of people click apply but don't complete the application. Why do you think that they do not complete the application? They clearly were interested. Let me ask this question first to get to the answer. Has anyone ever gotten a survey from one of your retailers and you click to fill out the survey and then you stopped taking the survey at some point and didn't finish it? Why didn't you finish it? So we're going to talk about this in a minute. So the hypothesis here is that most don't complete it because it was a pain in the butt. And they just wanted their name in the hat, and they just wanted to be considered. They didn't want to fill out their government like pre-authorization to be part of the Secret Service. They just wanted to throw their name in the hat. All right, so I think it's important when we talk about your career site, when we talk about the job application process, know your KPIs. That stands for Key Performance Indicators. So let me just talk about a few that are relevant for recruitment. And by the way, there's a lot in here. I'm happy to share the deck with you. If you want to give me your business card, I can send it to you. But a few things. Impressions and views. This just helps to gauge interest over time. Like the one client I mentioned, they're not getting very many views to their career site. That is a key performance indicator that their career site is terrible. Engaged users. This is a Google Analytics term, but it tracks the in-session engagement. You might get a view, you might get a user, but if they're not engaged, you're not engaging. Top talent, right? Engagement events. This is clicks. This is form submission. This is views. This is downloads. This is calls to action. You're asking them to perform a task. Are they doing that? Time on page for key pages. You know, like how long does the average user spend on your careers page? If it's less than a minute, that's bad. You know, if it's more than 2 minutes, that's incredibly good, right? Conversion and completion. I spelled that wrong. I apologize. Completion rate. What percentage apply versus what percentage actually complete the application, which is what we just talked about. Oh, well, if only 40% or 91% don't complete it. Acquisition information. Where are you getting the leads? Are they coming in from LinkedIn? Are they coming in from Glassdoor? Are they coming in from Indeed? Are they coming in from social media? Are they coming in from an email that you sent out? And then I would just say generally, somewhat ignore bounce rate. So bounce rate is what percentage of users land on a page and then leave. And generally, you don't want that to be north of 50%. However, keep in mind, as people are coming to your site at times solely to just see what openings are available, they may not stay around to look at other things. We'd love for them to, but a lot of those repeat visitors are only going to look to see, do they have a project engineer opening right now? Oh, they don't. All right, I'll come back in a month and see what's available. So creating a smooth and seamless application process. In other words, we want them to know exactly what to do and to very quickly be able to do that. Okay, here's the open positions. Here's one I'm interested in. I can either learn more about it or I can directly apply. Bam. Do not make it complicated. This should be the most simple thing they could possibly perform on your website. Now, I think this is related, but integrating with your applicant tracking system, I believe, is important. What I often see is you go to a job openings page and it actually isn't part of the website. It sends them to the ATS website, which looks like a horrible version of your current site, or it doesn't even look like it remotely at all. And it's super confusing to the user and it's super clunky. And John can testify to this. I am convinced that every applicant tracking system in the world is hell-bent on making sure that agencies like Circle S do not integrate the job listings into the website. They want to protect their little world and make sure we send people elsewhere. We dealt with ADP. It was a pain in the butt, but we finally got it figured out. And it looks very beautiful on their site. You can filter by location. When someone's interested in the position, it takes them off site, and then they can go apply for the job. But when someone just wants to see what they're looking at, if you want them to stay on your career site and look at other things maybe later, don't invite them to leave and go to another website. And so there's very few ATS systems we've ever encountered that will not do exactly what you see here. Like, I think there was one time. All the others can do it. It isn't a feature on their website, and usually your sales rep doesn't even know you can do it. We usually end up having to go through some backdoor channel to a technical person. Oh yeah, we can provide that. It is a pain, but firms like us are willing to deal with getting stood up on calls and getting bad information just to get to the place where we can do this. Job listings should be easy to find. I've talked about that, but you should also, if you're a larger firm with a lot of jobs, you need to be able to sort and filter. Imagine going to Amazon and you had no easy way to find what you're looking for. So again, think about that. We can learn so much from e-commerce. Keywords like me, all right, I just need, think about it. You're Amazon, I got to just look for this thing, bam, I Google it. Or I go to a category, whatever that might be. You can sort by keyword, you can sort by state, put in your zip code, select a specific category, and it's going to do this nice filtering and sorting to find the exact role. They've got like 1,000 openings or something. So you got to be able to filter through that. If you're smaller, you may just filter by geography. If you're really small, you don't need to filter at all, but use your intuition to figure out which approach you should take. Now, this is a big one, because I got 3 words here that are not similar. Creative, specific, and realistic job descriptions. I would argue if you want to get the attention of top talent, HR should not write your job descriptions. I mean no disrespect to my friends in HR. Any HR people in here? Okay. I've spoken to HR groups before, and I will in a couple weeks, so I'm going to have to tread lightly there. But be creative. Your job description should be exciting, enticing. It should make me want to, you think about advertising copy, and you think about like what it takes to get your attention and make you buy the thing or sign up for the thing. The copy here should be, now I'm not saying this is the greatest job description ever. This one's probably more in the specific and realistic angle, but I'm telling you, hire a copywriter, get someone from the marketing team to put a spin on it, come up with something that makes you guys sound like an exciting place to come work, not like blah, 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 wastewater engineer, blah, 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 blah. That's not exciting. Specific. So look at here. They have their areas of expertise, answering questions, benefits, answering more questions, job brief. This is telling you exactly what the role entails, core areas of responsibility, and then the skills that are necessary for you to possess. There's actually a few more down there that I couldn't get on the screen. It is specific. It is answering a lot of their questions. It is giving them a great window into that role. And then realistic. This should be a no-brainer, but do not put a spin on a reality that will not exist when they actually land in that seat, right? Nothing will have someone running for the hills and giving you really bad Glassdoor reviews than when you sold them a bill of goods and they left their good job and went to work for what they thought was a better job only to discover it was nothing like what I was promised. Don't do that. But none of you are HR people, so make sure your HR team is very upfront and realistic. In our world, we call it attract and repel language, and we believe when we're hiring or when we're helping clients identify their core target audience, it is better to scare some people away if that reality is going to scare them away, because guess what? On the flip of that, there will be a type of client, a type of employee that will be attracted to that reality and not scared away, and that means you're going to get a better, higher quality candidate. All right, I've already teed this up, but I love this. Look at this. How's this for an application? First name, last name, email, desired position, comments, upload resume. Dude, HR doesn't need the full-blown application to just consider someone for candidacy. They can fill that out the first day you make them come into the office for the interview, like when you go to the doctor's office for the first time and they hand you that clipboard. Do that if you have to. You don't need that up front to know that John has got a good enough resume, he's worth a phone screen, right? But you saw 91 or 92% of people don't apply. They don't finish the application. It's because they realize you're literally asking them for their life story. It's a pain in the butt. No one wants to do that. When they just want to know, are you going to consider me or not going to consider me? So simplifying that application is going to get your percentage of people that actually follow through way higher. That 91%, that's across the board. That doesn't mean 91% of everybody on your website. That just means 91% of job candidates at some point in the process won't go through with the whole application. Something else that I think is important, give contact info for a real human. A real human. Do you want people interested in your company? Do you want people? Don't make them just fill out a form to a nobody, to a careers@jimbobengineering.com. This case, Chris Murphy. I got an actual human. I can now bug him. And like, okay, you might get some crank calls or you might get some unqualified candidates, but guess what? You might get some thoughtful candidates that have some legit questions. They want to talk to a person. They don't want to read your FAQ page. I think that's a big miss on a lot of websites. I don't see it very often. People have questions. They want answers. And think about it. Going to work for a company, especially if you're leaving an existing position, is a big decision that isn't taken lightly. I think we forget. Like, you know how you hear sometimes doctors, surgeons, they deal with serious things all the time. When that person's getting bad news, it's like, well, we get bad news every day, but for that one person, it's a really big deal. It's the same with HR people. It's such a thing. Benefits and, salary and hirings and firings isn't a big deal. It's all I do all day, but it's a really, really big deal for each individual person. Now I'll blow your minds with this last tip. This is where it's going. Chatbot live chat. Could save a lot of time, could get a lot of traction if you made an HR person available with this little chat bot at the bottom of your career site to have a question. Anybody used these little things on any of your retailers or your bank? Raise your hand. Who's used these? Yeah. So if you were a job seeker and you saw that and it popped up, hey, we're live, we've got a question, right? Probably going to use it. You probably could think of a question. It might make you want to ask a question. So this is definitely, we got a couple clients that are experimenting with this. And it's like, all right, well, who's going to be in control and how many people? And all of that is logistics that you can figure out. I would say this is a very, very, very inexpensive investment. It's like a monthly fee to do one of these chat bots. And you can set it up a lot of different ways. And if you try it for 6 months and it doesn't work, what did you lose? But you might engage the right candidate. So, all right, as I close, where should you go from here? So I'm just going to give you a few pointers. I've given you a lot of information. I do believe this deck you can hand to your HR team, and it gives them a plethora of helpful information that they could put into practice. But I would say number one is audit your website. I don't care if it's brand new. I don't care if it's 10 years old. All of that matters because you can update a new site. You can add on to a new site, and if you're going to be planning a new site because your site's old, this is all information. So look through the lens of all the things that I've talked about today. Do we have this? How do we treat this? How do we handle this? I think analyzing overall the KPIs, like what is our hit rate? What is our engagement rate? Are people looking at these pages? How are people completing the application? Evaluating your employer brand content. And employer brand content is any content on your site that tells your employer brand story. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of companies with very light amount of employer brand content. Employer brand content is specific to telling that story to a job candidate, not just your overall brand. They are different, they're aligned, but they're very different at the same time. Grade your site for first impressions. Remember that split second I talked about? Go evaluate your site. All right, hey, what do we, ask some of your friends, ask your coworker, ask your neighbor who isn't connected. When you first land, like what are some of the adjectives you would use to describe us, right? That could be a really good sign. Assess for those 15 essentials. Do we have this 15? Do we have 11? Do we only have 4? Or do we have 14, but half of those are only okay? They're not all that great. Look at it from a couple different angles. I would say, too, go through the application process yourself and evaluate. I ask that question a lot when I'm talking to HR teams. Have you ever been through this? Well, no. Well, they may be more likely to realize, we shouldn't ask 1,000 questions. and require a whole lot of paperwork just to fill out to apply for a job. Conduct a SWOT analysis. Man, this is like marketing 101 for 100 years, but strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Do a SWOT on your career's presence on your website. What are your strengths? Where are you weak? What are the opportunities, and what are the things that maybe are a threat? And then last but not least here, create a prioritized list of action items. What are the most important things that we need to do, and come up with your list, and then obviously implement those critical changes as soon as possible. If you're just missing half of the stuff that I've talked about, you can find a way to get that up there. Possibly all of that content exists in Word documents, in brochures that your HR team is hoarding to hand the candidate on their first visit to the office, and you got to put that stuff up there now and not worry about that. They should already know about all that stuff before they even get to your office. And this is just a reminder I like to give everyone. Digital ink never dries. So your website should always be constantly evaluating for how can we raise the bar? How can we do it better? What's missing? What can we add? What should we take away? What feature can we replace? It's not a one and done deal. It's not a set it and forget it. It's a living, breathing recruitment and marketing and business development machine that's 24/7 available to the world, and you should always be looking to elevate your web presence, obviously for job candidates, but also for clients and teaming partners as well. So that's what I got. So I will open it up for questions. All right. Well, hey guys, you've been a great audience. If you have any questions, I got some of my contact information. If you want a copy of the deck, just bring me your business card, and I'll be happy to send it to you. I work for Circle S Studio. We're a professional services marketing agency. We do a lot of work in web and strategy, consulting, branding, etc. So that's the closest thing to a sales pitch you'll ever hear out of my mouth. So give us a call if we can help.